All right, all right. We are back with another exciting week of GPS Live. Welcome everybody viewing in online. I'd like to introduce this as GPS Live for the week of September 9th. My name is Jonathan Singer, and I am joined today by the wonderful...
Kristen Bell. Hi.
Hey, Kristen. It's okay. We just like to have fun on the show, and so we really appreciate you joining this week. How is your week going?
Really good. Very busy, but busy is always good. So
Busy is great. Awesome. Well, things have been a little bit crazy over here. So down in Tampa, it actually rained so much yesterday that the pool overflowed. I don't think I've ever seen that happen, to have so much. But it was definitely crazy. And I've been getting so many of those text messages. Do you get those? The ones that are like obscure from a random number trying to get you to respond to stuff?
yes, and I can't believe when people actually respond with anything and even acknowledge them and are like, stop texting or whatever. It's like stop it, don't do that.
Yeah, it's like you're validating that your number is legit to be like encourage more activity.
Yeah, right. Like it actually landed somewhere and I got something. Yeah,
Exactly. Oh, you bit the hook, right? Hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, no. So I'm telling you, these text messages have been running rampant. I'm tired of them. They make me think that I got something important going on. It's just annoying. So again, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. And so to kind of kick things off, we have to do our little disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts of this live stream are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official opinions of GuidePoint Security. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, would you like to help kick off the first story of the week? It's, in my opinion, quite riveting.
Hi. Yes, it's really super interesting. It's actually it's from Bleeping Computer, and it's about Minecraft being, hackers' favorite way to deliver attacks to users who are trying to basically cheat at the game, or so it's almost like hackers hacking hackers.
I love that take on it, right? And so I guess what it sounds like where they're going with this is that at least in the gaming area, right, when it comes to social engineering, Minecraft seems to be the most popular when it comes to cyber criminals using the platform to lure unsuspecting players into installing malware, right? They think that they're hiding malware like in game cheats, installers, key gens. Oh gosh, key gens. Sometimes even the games themselves, right? And this is kind of like an age-old classic take on social engineering, right?
Yes, 100%. And like I say, I mean, you and I were talking earlier that the kind of the very base definition of hack and hacking is using an application in a way that it was never intended. So again, like they say, crime doesn't pay, cheating doesn't really either in this particular case.
Totally agree. And that's what some of it is that, you may be searching for the latest game hacks or money cheats, right? Like money generators or ways of auto leveling. I was joking about, a World of Warcraft auto leveler, get you to level 60. Not that I know what that means by any aspect, but absolutely playing on these. What's up?
I think you just told on yourself just a little bit.
I swear I didn't tell on myself at all. I've never looked into how to do auto leveling in World of Warcraft. But some of the interesting details from the article call out that it's not just when it comes to computer games, but also mobile games too, where these bad actors are also targeting naive players into downloading stuff for their mobile games and platforms to get into Android and iPhones. And so
I was going to say real quick on that subject, I have had the privilege of knowing, and still know some of the best mobile, penetration testers that are out there. And in my opinion, in the world, right? And if you talk to them, they don't put anything on their phone unless they know that application, who wrote it, like they know it's safe. They will not, so I always caution people that are so itchy to download apps from app stores, like stop, don't do that. You don't just download anything, especially games. Like I would never in a million years, being an application security person, I just don't download games at all on any kind of device.
Yeah, and there's a twofold part to that, right? Like it's the good old saying of that if it's free, you're the product. So there's a whole privacy aspect to some of this, and we're not even talking about necessarily the illegitimate players that are mentioned as far as like the malware distributors, but there's that aspect of it, of data collection that we're
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
in a lot of social media apps today. But also, this isn't necessarily the first time we'll hear about markets like even just Google's Play Store allowing malicious applications to be uploaded and distributed through their platform. I'm not saying that like, they're allowing it as in,
No.
let's do it, but they do slip through from time to time,
Well,
and so
oh, sorry. I was going to say, even the legitimate applications,
yeah.
a lot of times have privacy issues. So if you have one malicious app that you download, you could be just flooding all your data to really bad people and bad actors.
Oh, super quick. Part of the research calls out that there's a variety of malicious activities that some of these bad individuals are going to do once they can get a hold of your device, right? They're going to do something like info stealing, like whether it is an attack on privacy or going after credentials, going after a variety of bits of information within your computer and what it can determine from the environment around it. We're talking about cryptocurrency miners. That's still a big thing where once an application can land on a victim's computer, it will start mining because there's a lot of profit in that. And then finally, there's even the opportunity to have remote access, and these victims could be taken over in that sense. All right, so that's really really interesting to hear that the game market. I mean, what am I saying? Of course, it makes sense. But a lot of people still play these games, and a lot of people are, like you said, looking to cheat the system. And it's this whole kind of area is ripe for Google Ads to target unsuspecting victims to download their malicious toolings that may just appear to sound fun to play with, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to, I'll do this. Let's see if we can transition into our next article here. You want to take a crack at it?
Sure. So, as a lot of these games are a younger crowd that is a bulk users, and it seems like hackers are not just taking advantage of the older sector of the population, but very much young. We hear about babies, newborn social security numbers being stolen and whatnot, right? And they don't know until they're adult when they try to pull their first credit report. So same thing now. Ransomware is now entering the picture, and
Mm-hmm.
according to the Register, ransomware gang has hit the second largest U.S. school district, and near and dear to my heart because I'm a Los Angeles native. I did not go to LA Unified, but I have all kinds of friends who I grew up with who did, and some who are teachers now in that district. So pretty nasty stuff when you're going after kids.
Yeah, and that's crazy. So it's ranked. You mentioned the second largest school district in the United States, and we're talking more than 640,000 students in K-12 when it comes to this district, and they're under attack. Yes, they are hit with ransomware. This cyber gang that I can't say that I'm necessarily familiar with this name, but they're going after them, and it's still under investigation. Right, this is a very new thing. It just hit this week, and we're waiting to see how this is handled. And this isn't necessarily the first time this year, let alone historically, we're seeing just the education vertical being hit. Right, this was mentioned as like the 50th educational body to fall victim to ransomware gangs just this year alone. Right.
Yeah, and it looks like the numbers are going up, shooting up. very significantly as far as these types of attacks. And when compared to last year, I think
Mhm.
last year it was like it for the entire year was 88, and
Uh-huh.
now you've got 50 already, and we're not even in the fourth quarter of the year, so not good. And they were talking about 26 colleges and universities, 24 districts with 1,727 schools between them. I mean, it's kind of devastating, and it really helps mark the kind of the evil people that we're trying to fight against day in and day out. And I think that's really why I love what we do, is we're kind of the good guys behind the scenes, fighting the good fight, right? And trying to win. But stuff like these kinds of statistics are pretty devastating.
It is, and it kind of just goes to show, right? No matter where you are, no matter what vertical you're in, or even if you're a consumer, oftentimes of some of these businesses and organizations and entities, that ransomware is going to sadly affect you in some way, and so, it is. Right? You mentioned these attacks do have the potential to put the students at risk, the kids at risk. Luckily, in the article, they do specifically call out that although there are issues happening right within the district, it's not going to stop them from providing instruction and transportation and food, right? And so I think those are absolutely the most critical. Is the students being able to get to school, students being fed, is kind of is absolutely a big deal. And so just to kind of call out, something that's similar happened I want to put our, viewers at scale here, just to understand what we're talking about. Baltimore County Schools, right? Is another district that was hit with ransomware more recently, and they're much smaller. They're less than a fifth of the size. We're talking fewer than 200 schools compared to LA County's over 1,000 schools, and that district alone spent more than $8 million recovering after their ransomware attack, right? And so I think as we learn more about this, with the FBI and CISA on the ground working to help deal with this response, I'm interested to see what this kind of thing is going to cost, right? A lot of people are going to ask, if I get hit with ransomware, will I be able to afford it? Will my cyber insurance cover it? What's this going to cost me? Do I pay, or how do I recover? Right? I bet these are things you hear all the time, right?
Oh, right. And I mean, I think, there are a couple of things that ring bells in my mind about this, right?
Ring bells. Oh,
Pun intended. No, not
yeah.
really. But I mean, one is cyber insurance. Like, how does a
Mhm.
public entity go out and now that their school budgets suffer enough? Like I
Oh
say,
yeah.
I have friends that work in the district. These teachers are literally putting up, like, I don't know if it's GoFundMe, but some sort of form of the same thing to ask for their wish list, because they're providing their materials in their classrooms a lot of the time. The parents of the students are also contributing to things like crayons and paper towels and all of that. So now you've got a whole new budgetary expense that schools frankly can't afford, with them being targeted now. And then on top of that, you have, the article now is citing like cybersecurity training now being, and anybody who procures that for their organization knows that that's expensive. And when you're talking
Yeah.
to many people and this many teachers and administrators, and that's a whole lot of people, and maybe even students, because students are in their educational, and computers have entered the classroom in a much more provocative way than ever before too. So now, are you talking about extending cybersecurity awareness to students as well? I mean, I don't know. How far do you go with it?
You're right. That does put a lot of pressure on the district. Puts a lot of additional costs on the district, and you're right. Right, where is the fine line between your employees and your consumers? And is there an expectation that, since they're involved in active internet connections, utilizing the technical resources of your facilities, right, connecting to the Wi-Fi, laptops, tablets, all these different things, does that influence or affect your operations on a broader scale, or are you able to effectively segment that?
Right.
There's so many times that I've seen in pen test reports where the guest Wi-Fi was able to, hop to the corporate network. We saw that in lots of attacks in the past. I mean, if we all look back to Target, even something of that nature, where appliances and IoT devices are accessing portions of the network that they shouldn't have. And so, absolutely, it does spark an interesting question, and we'd love to hear from any of our viewers online. We do read the comments. We do try to accept your feedback as constructive as it is. And how would you deal with some kind of situation like this? So it is really sad, and I'm going to continue to stay on top of this story as more information comes out. I do hate to see that in the article they do call out this particular group of threat actors. They disproportionately target the education sector with ransomware. I think that's just terrible. So it's no good. Well, let's just jump over here then to the next little bit of interesting, challenging news. So when we're talking about school districts and getting hit by ransomware gangs, well, what about, taking that concept to, instead of ransomware as a service, how about phishing as a service? This seems to be an all new term that I haven't heard yet. We've talked about a handful of different as a service criminal enterprise toolings these days, but this is definitely the newest one. So this article coming to us from the Hacker News talks about Evil Proxy phishing service, and it's focused on allowing cyber criminals to bypass two-factor security. And I'm thinking, hold on a second. Everybody says two-factor, multi-factor was supposed to help us with all of our password and authentication problems. Now what are we doing about this, right? And so there's a whole platform now that is advertising, as a criminal tool to help facilitate phishing exercises, right? So, in application security, what is your kind of perspective on this?
It's a bit mind-boggling, to be honest, and it's funny. When I first was going into this, and because I come from a development background and then wanted to go into application security, and I remember telling my parents, who really didn't understand any of this whole world, right, that what I was going to do, and they were like, well, that you can't do that. What if they come out with an easy button, like just a thing that fixes everything? And I'm like, that is never ever going to happen. And it seems like once we kind of feel like we've climbed one hill, then there's just something to devastate, and as much as just the whole nature of how we're coding and building applications has changed so dramatically, there's enough to keep up with. And then having something like this come out, it's kind of bizarre. And they're talking about using reverse proxies and cookie injection methods for doing these bypasses, which is even more, I think cookie problems specifically are like a low-hanging fruit. I talk to people about this all the time when we're talking about shifting left and starting to really teach developers how to code. I'm like, there's some things that as a pen tester for years I saw like 95% of the time, and I guarantee you all of our pen testers still see it 95% of the time. Cookie flaws, like just simple configuration problems in cookies that are just some of these things just aren't, they're looked at as lows, so nobody pays attention to them. They're really trying to focus on their highs and maybe some of their mediums first. So it's like, this is why some of those things that seem so innocuous may not be, right?
Yeah, well, I do want to make a call out here. So thanks, Jordan, for jumping in with Hack the Planet, because that's exactly what this is about. You're right. There's a lot of challenges, especially with what this is involved in with the cookie injection methods, and just to call out some of the targets that this platform is able to simply clone a login page and steal the credentials from, stuff like Apple iCloud, Facebook, GitHub, Google, Dropbox, Instagram, and even stuff like repositories. And I mentioned GitHub, but stuff like NPM and Ruby gems too. And this just kind of goes to even further target some of those supply chain things that we've talked about here on the show, where if we can steal credentials to a developer of a large, some kind of library, well, then that's going to help get pushed out, and that affects a lot of applications too. It's definitely interesting. We have actually some questions from our viewers online. Coming from Tracy, how do you hold those vendors that are providing your two-factor authentication accountable if you are hacked? And that's an interesting one, right? These two-factor authentication kind of responsibilities are coming from the platforms themselves. So it would be like the two-factor coming from Facebook or the two-factor coming from Twitter, not necessarily some kind of single sign-on SAML platform outside of that, which those also provide their own set of interesting challenges. But I know how, those things where you have to set up the little picture, like, yes, this is my picture, and if I don't have my picture, then this authentication form is fake, right? Like, those are some of the techniques that we're seeing today that are being used. But really, at the end of the day, this is just kind of an inherent challenge that we can't necessarily develop our way out of right now, in the sense because the toolings are becoming so automated that they can deliver a phishing page, get the credentials, send them back to the real website, get a session, and then give it to the bad actor, all in one fell swoop, right? That's what we're talking about here and what they're developing. And so thanks for tuning in and watching the show with the great
Cayman
comments.
Islands, by the way.
From the Cayman Islands. It is very cool. But yeah, this really starts to target not just social media, but some of those upstream providers when it comes to supply chain and development security. So, I mean, how can we? Is there anything you can think of that we can help prevent against this?
Well, I mean, educating users, right? You kind of brought it up. Like, if there is some mechanism and you go to a login page and you see an image that you shouldn't see, I mean, we are savvy enough to know, but people are still, I think, on the mindset that they'll trade their password for a candy bar. So we really need to be savvy users. And I think that's kind of the point to a lot of this, right? Like the last story too, there's a continuing theme of like, don't trust, in every single one of these stories, it's don't trust what you're clicking on, what you're downloading, when you're going. So there's some of that. As far as it's a layers of the onion, right? When we're talking two-factor authentication, when we're talking about different kinds of things, I think you brought it up when you talked about the image. Like, we have these other things to sort of have these multiple layers, so that if one thing fails, like, you don't want two-factor authentication to be a single point of failure, right? You want to have it's kind of like the old school opinion of, hey, we don't care about the security of our applications if they're internally facing, because they're internally facing. We only care about securing things that's out there in the public domain. There's a lot of naivety to that anymore. So it's the same thing here. You can't solely rely and say, hey, we don't really care about this application or the nature of the security of the application because we have two-factor auth. So nobody can break in, right? So I think there's that too. Like, from a configuration perspective, what other kind of safeguards can we put in place? It's one of those things where I think some people think that they can protect their own data, but your data is in so many places. These are platforms that most Americans use at least one of them, right? Mm-hmm. So they're very, very prevalent. And then I think, one of the things, to Tracy's point, as far as depending on vendors or depending on these platforms that you're using to protect your information, your bug bounty programs, although I'm not a big proponent of like the public ones where you sort of invite the whole world to hack at your stuff, but internal bug bounty programs are really helpful. Having everybody's eyeballs on what's happening, and if they see a flaw, they report it, and they're incentivized to do so. So I think it's a cultural thing, it's a technology thing, it's an educational thing. It's just like everything else. We have to kind of look at it from all the different perspectives that we can, unfortunately, which makes it complex and terrible.
I completely agree on your take about how a lot of it has to do with awareness and education and training, right? Just to kind of align, like you said, with our first story around downloading malicious game cheats and tools. It's targeting individuals that are collecting things from a non-official or non-original source. And it's, with stuff like typo squatting on domains and other types of particular attacks within the browser that help disguise or hide where a website's true origin is, right? That we're going to continue to see more phishing attacks and more spoofing of these web pages and sites to collect and harvest user credentials, and now this multi-factor approach too. I remember this kind of makes me think of the CAPTCHA services, right?
Yeah.
Where a CAPTCHA is used to prevent certain automations and functions, but you can outsource CAPTCHAs now, right? It's not necessarily even an OCR thing anymore. You can hire individuals that just solve CAPTCHAs all day as a service. Right there's another as a service, and to system to bypass. And so I think criminal enterprises are finding clever ways to target some of this stuff, and this is going to be one of those. I completely agree. Awareness and education and training, and just keeping a watchful eye. I feel like we're already in the age of people are starting to better understand that bad actors are out there. We just got to continue to train folks and kind of keep that going, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
I was going to say, even like illegitimate news sites. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of this bad stuff in is, any kind of salacious news story. There will be these really weird domains that pop up. So if you Google a particular news story that you see on the news, want to know more about it, you'll see just miles and miles and miles of bizarre domains that you've probably never heard of. Like, that's probably not where you want to read more about that story, not because of the accuracy of the information, because they're copying and pasting from something else, but literally just because of what you might be, what kind of vulnerabilities might be executing in your browser as you click on that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, you have to be a savvy user of technology, and it's just imperative if you kind of want to keep your secrets secret.
Well, Tracy, you're absolutely right when it comes to if, not when, right? And it's when you find out. And it's targeting popular things. Before the show we were talking about celebrity gossip is even a great one, and still the techniques of black hat SEO can help get Google ads or first page search results to bring you to websites that are, again, going to deliver content, going to try to push things on you and try to take over your system, sadly. And so, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this week. It's been wonderful. This has been really, really fun, good discussion. I do appreciate it. I think that our viewers online really enjoyed, and we love hearing from our viewers online, whether it's live or in the future. Your comments still do matter to us, and so we will take every opportunity to try to interact and reply. With that, for the week of September 9th, 2022, this has been GPS Live. And again, my name is Jonathan Singer.
And thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you, Kristen. We really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and we'll kick off our last bumper, and have a great weekend, everybody. So take care and cheers.